Amy Morrison felt rough hands gripping her arms as the alien soldiers dragged her down the long metal corridor. Her boots scraped against the floor, leaving faint streaks of dirt and blood. The walls around her glowed with a sickly green light that hurt her eyes. She could hear other prisoners crying in the cells they passed, but she kept her face blank and emotionless. The Krell soldiers were tall, much taller than any human. Their bodies looked like giant insects covered in dark armor that seemed to be part of their skin. Their eyes were black and emotionless like polished stones. When they breathed, it sounded like wind whistling through a crack in a wall. Amy's medical uniform was torn in several places. Dark stains covered the front where she had been treating wounded soldiers before the attack. The Krell had taken her medical bag, but they had missed the small item hidden in her left boot. She had been very careful during the search, staying calm and quiet so they would not look too closely. The attack on New Haven Colony had been brutal and fast. The field hospital where Amy worked had stood no chance against the Krell warships that appeared in the sky without warning. She had been stitching up a soldier's leg wound when the first explosion shook the building. Then came the screaming, the running, the desperate attempts to evacuate patients who could not walk. Amy had stayed until the very end. She always stayed until the end. That was who she was. A medic did not abandon the wounded, even when enemy soldiers were breaking down the doors. She had saved 3 more lives before the Krell burst into the operating room and surrounded her. Now she was on their command ship somewhere in deep space. She had been unconscious during the transport, probably drugged. When she woke up, she was in a small holding cell with 20 other humans, all of them terrified and injured. The Krell had kept them there for 2 days with barely any food or water, before they started pulling people out one by one for questioning. When Amy's turn came, they brought her to a white room that was too bright and too cold. A Krell officer sat behind a curved desk that looked like it had grown from the floor rather than been built. His armor was different from the others, decorated with markings that probably meant he was important. The officer's name was Vexthor. Amy learned this because he said it himself, seeming proud of it. He spoke human language well, though his voice clicked and hissed in strange places. "You are Lieutenant Commander Amy Morrison," Vexthor said. It was not a question. "You serve in the Human Defense Corps Medical Division. You have treated over 4,000 human soldiers in combat zones." Amy said nothing. She stood straight and looked at a point on the wall behind his head. "We know much about you," Vexthor continued. His mandibles moved in a way that might have been a smile. "You have received many honors, many medals. The humans think very highly of you." Still, Amy remained silent. Vexthor stood up and walked around the desk. He moved in a way that reminded Amy of a predator circling prey. "I want information, Commander Morrison. I want to know where your military bases are located. I want to know how many ships you have, how many soldiers, how many weapons. You will tell me these things." "No," Amy said quietly. It was the first word she had spoken since her capture. The Krell officer stopped walking. His black eyes focused on her face. "You refuse?" "The conventions of interstellar warfare are clear," Amy said, keeping her voice steady. "I am required to give you my name, rank, and service number. Nothing else. You know this." Vexthor made a sound like rocks grinding together. It might have been laughter. "Conventions, rules. You humans care so much about your rules, but rules only matter when both sides follow them. We Krell do not." He moved closer until he was standing right in front of Amy. She could smell something sharp and chemical coming from him. "I will ask you again. Where are your bases?" Amy met his eyes and said nothing. The silence stretched out for a long moment. Then Vexthor turned away and walked back to his desk. He touched a panel on the surface and spoke in his own language, the words sounding like insects chirping and metal scraping. 2 guards entered the room immediately. "This human thinks she is brave," Vexthor said, switching back to human language. "She thinks her silence makes her strong. We will teach her differently." He looked at Amy again. "There is a special place on this ship. We call it Holding Bay 7. Very few prisoners are taken there. Only the ones who need to learn a particular lesson." The guards grabbed Amy's arms again. She did not struggle. That would waste energy, and she would need all her energy soon. "What lives in Holding Bay 7? One of the younger Krell guards asked. His voice sounded nervous. Vexthor's mandibles spread wide. "A monster. The most dangerous creature we have ever captured. It has killed 17 of our warriors since we brought it aboard 6 months ago. No one who enters its cell has ever come out alive. The young guard's grip on Amy's arm loosened slightly. "Commander, perhaps there is another way to question her. If we put her in that cell, we lose any chance of getting information." "Information?" Vexthor clicked his mandibles together sharply. "I do not expect to get information from this human. I expect to make an example of her. I expect the other prisoners to hear her screams and understand what happens when they refuse to cooperate. Take her." The guards pulled Amy from the room. As they walked through the corridors, she could feel the mood changing. More Krell soldiers appeared, following at a distance. Word was spreading through the ship. They were going to watch the human die. The walk to Holding Bay 7 took almost 10 minutes. They went down several levels, deeper into the ship. The air grew warmer. Amy could hear a low humming sound that seemed to come from the walls themselves. Finally, they reached a large door marked with symbols Amy could not read, but she did not need to read them to understand. This was a warning. This was a place of danger. Vexthor had followed them. He stood beside the door, looking pleased with himself. "Last chance, Commander Morrison. Tell me what I want to know, and I will return you to the holding cell with the others. Refuse, and you go through this door. Choose now." Amy looked at him calmly. "I have nothing to say to you." Vexthor gestured at the guards. One of them pressed his hand against a panel beside the door. It slid open slowly, revealing darkness beyond. The humming sound grew louder. They pushed Amy inside. She stumbled but did not fall. Behind her, the door sealed shut with a heavy metallic sound that echoed in the vast space. Through the door, she could hear Krell soldiers gathering to watch. She could sense their excitement, their anticipation of violence. Amy stood still, letting her eyes adjust to the dim light. The cell was enormous, easily 100 feet across and 50 feet high. Massive chains hung from the ceiling and walls. Each chain was as thick as her arm and glowed with a faint blue light. Energy dampeners, she realized, designed to weaken and restrain. Then she heard it. A breath slow and deep that made the floor beneath her feet vibrate slightly. Something moved in the shadows at the far end of the cell. Two eyes opened in the darkness. They glowed like amber fire, bright and ancient and intelligent. The eyes fixed on Amy, watching her with an intensity that would have terrified most people. Amy did not feel terror. Instead, she felt something else entirely. Something like recognition. Something like hope. The creature in the shadows began to move forward, and Amy Morrison allowed herself the smallest of smiles. Everything was going exactly according to plan. The creature stepped into the light, and Amy saw him fully for the first time in 6 months. Her heart beat faster, but not from fear. From joy. DraHFY was magnificent. His scales shimmered with colors that seemed to shift as he moved. Deep purple flowing into midnight blue, then touching hints of silver at the edges. His body was massive, easily 30 feet long from nose to tail. Wings lay folded against his sides, each one large enough to wrap around a small building. Curved horns crowned his head, 4 of them sweeping back in elegant arcs. Smoke curled from his nostrils with each breath. The chains attached to his legs and neck glowed brighter as he moved. Energy dampeners designed specifically to keep him weak. Even with the chains limiting his power, DraHFY moved with a grace that seemed impossible for something so large. Each step was precise and controlled. Outside the cell, Amy could hear the Krell soldiers pressing closer to watch. She heard their clicking voices, excited and cruel. They expected to see her torn apart. They expected blood and screaming and death. They were going to be very disappointed. DraHFY approached slowly. His amber eyes never left Amy's face. When he was close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body, close enough that his shadow covered her completely, he stopped. His massive head lowered until one enormous eye was level with Amy's face. For a moment, neither of them moved. The silence stretched out, heavy with meaning that only the 2 of them understood. Then DraHFY did something that shocked every Krell watching. He bowed his head, lowering it until his horns almost touched the floor. When he spoke, his voice was like distant thunder rolling across mountains, deep and powerful and absolutely clear. "Commander Morrison," he said in perfect human language, "you have returned." The Krell outside the cell erupted into confused chittering. Amy heard Vexthor's voice rising above the others, sharp with disbelief and anger. How did the monster know the human's name? How could it speak her language? What was happening? Amy reached out slowly. Her hand, small and fragile compared to DraHFY's massive form, touched his snout gently. His scales were warm beneath her palm, warmer than any human skin. She could feel the slight vibration of his breathing. I told you I would come back, Amy said quietly, speaking only to him. I promised I would find you. DraHFY closed his eyes at her touch. A sound came from deep in his chest, something like a cat's purr but much deeper and more resonant. I knew you would keep your promise. I never doubted. Vexthor's voice cut through the moment. The Krell commander was shouting orders, his words coming fast and angry. Seal the observation ports. Activate secondary containment. Call the security teams. Something is wrong here. But Amy ignored him. She pressed her forehead against DraHFY's scales and suddenly she could feel it again. The bond. The connection that had been torn apart when the Krell captured him 6 months ago. It came rushing back like water through a broken dam, flooding her mind with warmth and light and the overwhelming presence of another consciousness that was as familiar to her as her own thoughts. Emotions flowed between them through the bond. Relief, joy, pain at the separation they had endured, fury at the Krell for what they had done, and beneath it all, absolute and unshakable trust. They hurt you, Amy said, her voice tight with controlled anger. She could feel the pain in his legs where the chains had burned into his scales. She could sense the hunger from 6 months of minimal feeding. She could feel the exhaustion from constant vigilance, never knowing when the Krell would try to kill him again. Pain fades, DraHFY replied. What matters is that you are here now. What matters is that we are together again. Amy stepped back and looked up at him. Can you still fly? Are the dampeners too strong? Once the chains are removed, I will be strong enough, DraHFY said. But Commander, what is your plan? There are over 300 Krell soldiers on this ship. Even at full strength, we cannot fight them all. A small smile crossed Amy's face. We do not need to fight them all. We just need to fight the right ones and create enough chaos that the others cannot stop us. She reached down to her left boot. And I came prepared. Her fingers found the small device hidden in the lining of her boot. The Krell had searched her, but they had not been thorough enough. They had expected a medic to carry medical tools, and when they found nothing obvious, they assumed she was harmless. They had not considered that a medical scanner could be modified, its internal components replaced with something far more dangerous. Amy pulled out what looked like a simple handheld device about the size of her palm. To anyone who did not know better, it might have been a diagnostic tool for checking vital signs. But Amy knew better. She had spent 3 months building this device herself, carefully crafting it from stolen parts and modified components. It was a plasma cutter, military grade, powerful enough to slice through reinforced steel, powerful enough to cut the control nodes on Krell energy dampeners. You planned this, DraHFY said. It was not a question. Your capture was deliberate. Of course it was, Amy replied. She moved to the closest chain attached to DraHFY's front left leg. I have been tracking this ship for 2 months. I knew they were holding you here. I knew eventually they would put me in this cell, either to interrogate me or to kill me. I counted on their arrogance. Risky, DraHFY observed, though she could feel his approval through their bond. I learned from the best, Amy said. She activated the plasma cutter. A thin beam of brilliant blue light extended from the tip. You taught me that sometimes the most direct approach is not the best one. Sometimes you need to let your enemy think they have won, then you strike when they are not expecting it. She pressed the beam to the control node on the first chain. The node was a small square device about 2 inches across that controlled the energy flow through the dampening field. It was sophisticated Krell technology, designed to be nearly indestructible. Nearly, but not completely. Amy had studied Krell dampener technology for 6 months. She had bribed a black market dealer for schematics. She had tested variations on captured equipment. She knew exactly where to cut and for how long. The plasma beam burned through the control node's casing. Sparks flew and a high-pitched whine filled the air. After 12 seconds, the node shattered. The chain fell away from DraHFY's leg, crashing to the floor with a heavy metallic clang. Immediately, Amy felt a surge of strength through their bond. With one chain gone, some of DraHFY's power returned. Not all of it, but enough to make a difference. Keep going, DraHFY urged. They will realize what you are doing soon. Amy was already moving to the second chain on his other front leg. The Krell outside were shouting now, their voices rising in panic. She heard the sound of energy weapons being charged. The observation ports in the cell door were starting to glow as the Krell prepared to fire inside. They cannot shoot while you are in here, DraHFY said. They fear hitting me. I am too valuable to them. They have been trying to study my biology, to learn the secrets of my species. They will not risk killing me by accident. Then we need to move fast before they find a solution, Amy said. The second control node shattered under her plasma cutter. Another chain fell. DraHFY's power grew stronger. She moved to his back legs, working quickly and precisely. Her hands were steady despite the danger. Years of surgical training had taught her how to stay calm under pressure. Years of combat had taught her how to work while people were shooting at her. The third chain fell. Then the fourth. DraHFY's wings began to spread slightly, testing their range of motion. The chains on his neck were the last ones and the most heavily reinforced. This will take longer, Amy warned. She climbed onto a fallen chain to reach the node attached to his collar. We have time, DraHFY said. Though they both knew that was optimistic, the door to the cell suddenly shook. The Krell were trying to open it. They were going to flood the cell with soldiers, hoping to kill Amy before she could finish freeing DraHFY. Hurry, Commander, DraHFY said urgently. Amy pressed the plasma cutter harder against the node. The beam burned brighter. The metal around the node began to glow red, then white. Her hand was only inches from the heat, but she did not pull back. Vexthor's voice echoed through speakers built into the cell walls. Stop what you are doing, human. Stop now, or we will vent the atmosphere from this cell. You will suffocate. Empty threat, DraHFY said calmly. Venting would kill me too. He will not do it, Amy agreed. She kept cutting. The node was almost through. Just a few more seconds, the door burst open. Krell soldiers poured in, at least 20 of them, all carrying weapons. They spread out, forming a half circle around Amy and DraHFY. Their weapons were aimed, ready to fire. Vexthor entered last, walking slowly and deliberately. His mandibles were spread in anger. Step away from the creature, Commander Morrison. Step away or we will shoot you where you stand. Amy looked at him. Then she looked down at the node she was cutting. It was 1 second away from breaking. 1 second from freeing DraHFY completely. She smiled at Vexthor. No, the node shattered. The final chain fell away. The moment the final chain fell, power flooded back into DraHFY's body like a dam breaking. Amy felt it through their bond. A surge of energy so strong it made her gasp. The dragon's scales began to glow faintly and the air around him shimmered with heat. DraHFY roared. The sound was deafening in the enclosed space, shaking the walls and floor. The Krell soldiers stumbled backward, their weapons wavering. Some of them dropped their guns entirely, their instincts screaming at them to run from a predator far more dangerous than anything they had encountered before. Vexthor held his ground, though Amy could see fear in his black eyes now. Fire! He screamed at his soldiers. Kill them both. The Krell opened fire. Energy bolts filled the air, bright streaks of deadly light converging on Amy and DraHFY. But DraHFY was already moving. His wings snapped open, fully extended now without the chains holding them back. Each wing was nearly 40 feet across, covered in the same shimmering scales as his body. He wrapped one wing around Amy, shielding her completely. The energy bolt struck his wing and bounced off harmlessly. DraHFY's scales were incredibly tough, evolved over millions of years to withstand the harsh radiation of his homeworld's twin suns. Krell weapons, powerful as they were, could barely scratch him. Hold on to me, DraHFY said through their bond. We are leaving. Amy grabbed one of his neck spikes and held tight. DraHFY's muscles bunched beneath her, and then he launched himself forward. He moved faster than something his size had any right to move, crossing the cell in 3 powerful strides. His tail whipped behind him, striking 2 Krell soldiers and sending them flying into the walls. The doorway was not large enough for his wings. That did not stop him. DraHFY crashed into the wall beside the door and the reinforced metal crumpled like paper. His claws tore through circuitry and support beams. Sparks flew and alarms began screaming throughout the ship. The hangar bay is 3 levels up, Amy shouted over the noise. That is where they are keeping the human prisoners. We need to free them. Agreed, DraHFY replied. He burst through the wall into the corridor beyond. Krell soldiers scattered in front of him, their weapons forgotten in their panic. DraHFY did not bother chasing them. He had a specific destination and nothing would slow him down. The ship's automated defense systems activated. Turrets dropped from the ceiling, their targeting lasers painting red dots on DraHFY's scales. They began firing immediately, energy bolts and solid projectiles filling the narrow corridor. Amy pulled the stolen Krell rifle from her belt. She had taken it from one of the soldiers in the cell. Now she used it, picking off the turrets with precise shots. Her medical training had taught her about anatomy and weak points. That knowledge translated surprisingly well to shooting mechanical targets. DraHFY smashed through anything in his path. Bulkheads, support columns, security gates, nothing could stop him. He was like a force of nature, unstoppable and terrible in his fury. 6 months of captivity had not broken him. It had only made him angrier. They reached a vertical shaft that ran through multiple levels of the ship. Normally it would be used for cargo lifts. DraHFY looked up at the opening far above and crouched low. His wings folded tight against his body. "This is going to be rough," he warned. Then he jumped. His powerful legs launched him upward like a rocket. Wind screamed past Amy's face as they shot up the shaft. She held on with both hands, trusting DraHFY completely. The walls blurred around them. 3 levels passed in seconds. DraHFY spread his wings at the top, slowing their ascent just enough to make a controlled landing. They crashed through the access grate and into another corridor. This one was wider and showed signs of heavy traffic. They were getting closer to the hangar bay. More soldiers appeared. These were better trained and better armed than the guards at Holding Bay 7. They had formed a defensive line across the corridor, heavy weapons mounted on portable barricades. An officer shouted orders and the soldiers opened fire in a coordinated volley. DraHFY took the hits on his chest and shoulders. Some of the more powerful weapons actually pierced his scales, drawing thin lines of dark blood. Amy felt his pain through their bond, sharp and immediate. But DraHFY did not slow down. If anything, the pain made him more determined. His mouth opened and light built in his throat. It started as a dim glow, then grew brighter and brighter until it was almost too intense to look at directly. The Krell soldiers saw it and their disciplined firing line broke as they scrambled to get away. They were not fast enough. DraHFY released his breath weapon. It was not fire, though it looked similar. It was concentrated plasma, superheated gas magnified by biological lenses in his throat, until it reached temperatures found only in the cores of stars. The beam lanced out, brilliant white and blue, and struck the barricade. Metal vaporized instantly. The weapons melted into pools of molten slag. The soldiers who had not run fast enough were thrown backward by the thermal wave, their armor scorched and smoking. None of them got back up. Amy felt DraHFY's exhaustion through the bond. That attack had cost him significant energy. Energy he had not fully recovered after 6 months of starvation and dampening chains. But he pushed forward anyway, driven by determination and Amy's presence at his back. "The hangar is just ahead," Amy said. She could see the large doors at the end of the corridor. "But they will have sealed it. We need to find a way to open those doors. Or we make our own entrance," DraHFY suggested. He angled toward the wall instead of the doors. Hangar bays are usually against the outer hull for easy access. "If we breach the wall here, we should come out inside the bay itself." "Do it," Amy said. DraHFY hit the wall at full speed. His horn struck first, piercing the metal like spears. Then his shoulders and bulk followed, tearing through layers of hull plating and internal structures. Amy ducked low against his neck, protecting her face from flying debris. They burst through into the hangar bay in an explosion of torn metal and sparking wires. The bay was enormous, easily 500 feet across and 200 feet high. Rows of Krell fighters and shuttles filled the space, all parked in neat lines. And against the far wall, behind energy barriers, were the human prisoners. Amy saw them immediately. 73 humans, according to the intelligence she had gathered before her capture. Soldiers, medics, pilots, and civilians from New Haven Colony, all of them trapped behind barriers, guarded by Krell soldiers with weapons ready. The guards had not expected a dragon to crash through the wall. For a few precious seconds, they stood frozen in shock. Amy used those seconds well. She jumped down from DraHFY's back and ran toward the nearest control console. Her fingers flew over the alien interface, inputting commands she had memorized during her months of preparation. The energy barriers flickered and died. The human prisoners stared in disbelief, first at the barriers dropping, then at the massive dragon standing in the middle of the hangar. "Move," Amy shouted at them. "Get to the ships. We are leaving now." One of the prisoners, a young man in a pilot's uniform, recovered first. He sprinted toward the nearest Krell fighter. "You heard the commander. Everyone to the ships. Pilots, grab anything that flies. Everyone else, find a seat." Amy recognized the voice immediately. Jake Morrison, her younger brother. He had been captured during the initial attack on New Haven. Seeing him alive sent a wave of relief through her, but there was no time for reunions. Not yet. The Krell guards finally recovered from their shock and opened fire. DraHFY positioned himself between the guards and the fleeing prisoners, his body acting as a living shield. Energy bolts struck his scales repeatedly, each hit drawing small amounts of blood. Amy ran back to DraHFY's side. "There are too many of them. We need to disable their weapons or take out the guards." "Leave that to me," DraHFY said. His eyes glowed brighter and power gathered around him. The air itself seemed to bend and shimmer. "Get the prisoners onto the ships. I will handle the guards." Amy wanted to argue, wanted to stay by his side, but she knew he was right. They had different roles in this mission. His was to fight. Hers was to lead and protect. She touched his side briefly, sending reassurance through their bond, then ran toward the prisoners. Behind her, DraHFY roared again and charged at the Krell guards. The battle that followed was brief and brutal. DraHFY was a warrior born, trained in combat techniques that predated human civilization. The Krell guards were skilled, but they were not prepared to fight something that combined raw physical power with intelligence and tactical awareness. Amy helped organize the prisoners, directing them to different ships based on their skills. Pilots got the fighters, everyone else crowded into shuttles. Jake coordinated the pilots, his natural leadership shining through despite the chaos. Within minutes, engines were warming up and hatches were sealing. Then Vexthor arrived with reinforcements. He came through the main hangar doors with at least 50 soldiers, all of them armed with heavy weapons. His mandibles spread wide in fury when he saw the prisoners boarding ships. "Stop them," he screamed. "Destroy those ships. Kill the dragon! Kill them all!" The soldiers opened fire, but they made a critical mistake. They focused on DraHFY instead of the ships. DraHFY drew their attention deliberately, roaring and charging to keep all eyes on him. Every shot aimed at him was a shot not aimed at the escaping Prizzo. Vexthor fired. The energy bolt struck DraHFY in the shoulder, burning through scales and into muscle. The dragon flinched but did not fall. Instead, he swung his massive tail in a wide arc. Vexthor barely had time to raise his arms before the tail hit him like a battering ram. The Krell commander flew backward, crashing into a stack of supply crates 30 feet away. The other Krell soldiers hesitated. Their commander was down. The dragon was wounded but still fighting. The human prisoners were already in the ships. Everything was falling apart. Engines are hot. Jake shouted from the cockpit of a Krell fighter. "Commander, we need to go now." Amy kept her eyes on the Krell soldiers. They were regrouping, forming a new defensive line. More reinforcements would arrive soon. If they stayed here much longer, they would be overwhelmed by sheer numbers. "DraHFY, can you fly?" Amy asked through their bond. She felt his honest assessment. He was wounded and tired. The dampener chains had weakened him more than he wanted to admit. But he was strong enough for what needed to be done. "I can fly," he confirmed, "but not for long. We need to reach human space quickly. Then we leave now," Amy said. She pointed at the hangar bay doors. They were closed. Massive sheets of reinforced metal designed to withstand the vacuum of space. "Can you open those?" DraHFY turned his head to look at the doors. His eyes narrowed in calculation. "Yes, but once they open, the atmosphere will vent. Everyone in this hangar will be pulled out into space unless they are inside a sealed ship." "The Krell chose this fight," Amy said coldly. "They put you in chains. They put humans in cells. They do not get to complain about the consequences." She ran toward the nearest shuttle. DraHFY moved with her, his bulk clearing a path through the scattered Krell soldiers. Some tried to shoot. Others tried to run. DraHFY's tail and claws dealt with both groups efficiently. Amy climbed into the shuttle and secured herself in the co-pilot seat. The pilot, a middle-aged woman named Linda Carter, looked at her with wide eyes. "Commander, what about the dragon? He cannot fit inside a ship." "He does not need to," Amy replied. "DraHFY can survive in vacuum. His species evolved on a world with almost no atmosphere. Space will not harm him." Linda's eyes got wider, but she nodded. "Understood. All ships report ready for launch." Amy activated the communication system, broadcasting to all the stolen ships. "This is Commander Morrison. When those hangar doors open, fly straight out and do not stop for anything. Our destination is the border of human space. Coordinates transmitted to your navigation systems. We have allies waiting for us there." "What allies?" Jake's voice came through the comm. "Commander, we did not have time to call for backup." Amy allowed herself a small smile. "I called for backup 6 months ago. I told Captain Helen Carter exactly where we would be and when. She will be there. Through the shuttle's viewport, she could see DraHFY positioning himself in front of the hangar doors. He planted his feet firmly, his claws digging into the metal floor for traction. His wings spread wide. Light began to build in his throat again. The Krell soldiers realized what was about to happen. Those who could still move ran for the exits. Vexthor pulled himself up from the wreckage of the supply crates, clutching his side. He looked at DraHFY, then at Amy, visible through the shuttle viewport. "You will pay for this," he screamed. His voice carried even through the shuttle's hull. "The Krell Empire will hunt you down. We will find you. We will kill you and everyone you care about." Amy met his gaze calmly. She thought about the 73 prisoners they were saving. She thought about DraHFY, chained and tortured for 6 months. She thought about every human who had died in this war because the Krell believed they could take whatever they wanted. She smiled and waved at Vexthor. Then she triggered the shuttle's engines. DraHFY unleashed his plasma breath on the hangar doors. The concentrated beam struck the center of the doors with enough force to make the entire ship shudder. Metal glowed white, then red, then began to melt. A hole appeared, small at first but growing rapidly as DraHFY poured more power into his attack. The hole widened to 10 feet across. Then 20. Then the structural integrity failed completely, and the doors exploded outward in a shower of molten metal and twisted debris. Atmosphere rushed out through the opening. Everything not bolted down was pulled toward the vacuum of space. Krell soldiers screamed as they tumbled through the air. Equipment, weapons, supplies, all of it sucked out into the void. Vexthor managed to grab onto a support beam, his claws digging into the metal as the wind tried to tear him away. The stolen ships launched immediately. Fighters and shuttles roared through the opening, their engines blazing. Jake's fighter went first, followed by 3 others. The shuttles came next, heavier and slower, but protected by the fighter's flying escort. DraHFY leaped through the opening last. His wings caught the escaping atmosphere and used it to boost his speed. Within seconds, all the ships in the Dragon were in open space, flying at maximum speed away from the Krell command ship. Amy watched through the viewport as the Krell ship receded behind them. She could see weapons turrets tracking their movement. Several began firing, energy bolts and missiles streaking through space, but the distance was already too great. The weapons fell short and the escaping fleet continued accelerating. "Plot a course for the rendezvous point," Amy ordered Linda. "Stay in formation with the other ships. DraHFY will fly point." Through her bond with DraHFY, she could sense his position relative to the shuttle. He flew ahead of them, his body somehow propelling itself through the vacuum without visible means. One of the mysteries of his species that Amy had never fully understood. Solaran dragons could generate a field around themselves that allowed flight in any environment, even the void of space. They flew for 20 minutes at maximum speed. The Krell command ship gave chase, launching fighters and smaller pursuit vessels. But it was a big, slow warship. The stolen ships, small and nimble, steadily pulled ahead. Amy monitored the tactical display, counting the pursuing Krell ships. 17 fighters, 3 gunships. Dangerous numbers, but not overwhelming. Not if the backup she had arranged actually showed up. "Commander, we are approaching the coordinates," Linda said. "But I'm not seeing any ships on sensors. Are you sure your contact will be here?" "I am sure," Amy said. But inside, doubt began to creep in. What if Captain Carter had not believed her coded message? What if the fleet had been delayed? What if they were on their own against the pursuing Krell forces? Then space rippled. Reality bent and twisted as ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel. 1 ship at first, then 5, then 15. Within seconds, an entire human battle group materialized in front of the fleeing prisoners. At the center was the Defiance, a battleship 3 times the size of the Krell command ship. Around it flew destroyers, cruisers, and support vessels. 60 ships in total, all displaying the insignia of the Human Defense Corps 3rd Fleet. Captain Helen Carter's voice came through on all frequencies. "This is the defiance to escaping human vessels. You are under our protection. All ships fall in behind us. We will handle the Krell pursuit." The human battle group moved forward to engage the Krell ships. The Defiance opened fire first, its massive rail cannons launching projectiles at a significant fraction of light speed. The Krell fighters tried to scatter, but they were too close together. 3 fighters disappeared in bright explosions. The others turned and ran back toward their command ship. Amy felt relief flood through her. They had made it. Against all odds, the plan had worked. "All ships proceed to docking bays on the Defiance," Captain Carter ordered. "Medical teams are standing by. Commander Morrison, the captain requests your presence on the bridge immediately upon arrival. Jake's voice cut in. Commander, is the dragon coming with us? Amy looked out the viewport and saw DraHFY flying alongside the shuttle. His wounds had stopped bleeding, but he looked exhausted. She reached out through their bond and felt his weariness. DraHFY will land on the Defiance's flight deck, Amy said. He has earned rest and medical attention just like everyone else. The stolen ships docked one by one. Amy's shuttle was the last to land. As the docking clamps locked into place and the airlock pressurized, she finally allowed herself to relax. They were safe. The prisoners were free. DraHFY was free. She stepped out of the shuttle into the flight deck and was immediately surrounded by crew members. They stared, not at her, but at DraHFY. The dragon had landed nearby, his massive form dominating the deck. He folded his wings and lowered his head, clearly uncomfortable with all the attention. Amy walked over to him and placed her hand on his snout. It is all right. They are allies. Through their bond, she felt his trust in her judgment. If she said these humans were safe, then they were safe. He settled down onto his belly, still watching the crew carefully. A woman in an officer's uniform approached. She had short gray hair and sharp eyes that took in everything. Captain Helen Carter, Amy realized. They had met once before years ago, but Carter had changed. More lines on her face, more weight on her shoulders. The war was aging everyone. Commander Morrison, Carter said. She did not salute, which was appropriate since they were on a flight deck. Welcome aboard the Defiance. We need to talk. Yes, Captain, Amy replied. She glanced at DraHFY. Will he be safe here? Amy stood at attention, though exhaustion pulled at every muscle in her body. She had not slept properly in 3 days. Her uniform was torn and stained with blood, both human and alien, but she kept her back straight and her voice steady as she delivered her report. Admiral, mission complete. All 73 prisoners from New Haven Colony have been recovered. DraHFY has been freed from Krell captivity. Intelligence regarding Krell ship design and security protocols has been gathered. No human casualties during the escape. Admiral Hayes studied Amy with an expression that was hard to read. Finally, she spoke. You conducted an unauthorized infiltration of enemy territory. You deliberately allowed yourself to be captured. You risked not only your own life but the lives of every prisoner on that ship. If your plan had failed, the Krell would have killed all of you. Yes, Admiral, Amy replied. There was no point in denying it. Every word was true. You also violated at least 12 regulations regarding chain of command, mission authorization, and proper intelligence protocols. Hayes continued. Captain Carter informed me of your coded message, but you gave her almost no details. She had to assemble this rescue fleet based on faith alone. Amy glanced at Captain Carter, who stood nearby. The captain's face showed no emotion, but Amy thought she saw the slightest hint of approval in her eyes. Permission to speak freely, Admiral? Amy asked. Hayes nodded. Granted. DraHFY was held by the Krell for 6 months, Amy said. During that time, I submitted 14 formal requests through proper channels to authorize a rescue mission. All 14 were denied. I was told that one alien, even one as powerful as DraHFY, was not worth the risk. I was told to let it go and move on. Her voice hardened slightly. I could not let it go. DraHFY is not just an alien. He is my bonded partner. He fought alongside human forces for 2 years. He saved hundreds of human lives in combat. He trusted us to protect him, and we failed. I failed. So I did what was necessary to fix that failure. Hayes was silent for a moment. Then she walked around her command console and stood directly in front of Amy. You are aware that I could court-martial you for this? Yes, Admiral. You are aware that some people in high command are calling you reckless and dangerous? Yes, Admiral. Good, Hayes said. Because they are right. You are reckless and dangerous. You are also effective, loyal, and brave. The combination makes you either a disaster waiting to happen or the most valuable asset we have in this war. She stepped back and her expression softened slightly. High Command has reviewed your actions. They have also reviewed the intelligence you gathered on Krell ships and the morale boost your rescue mission has provided to our forces. Recruitment numbers have jumped 40% since word spread about the medic who rescued a dragon. Amy had not expected that. She had been so focused on freeing DraHFY that she had not considered the wider impact of her actions. Hayes continued. High Command has decided that court-martial would be a waste. Instead, they have approved a new special operations unit. Dragon Wing, they are calling it. You are promoted to full commander and given command of this unit. The words took a moment to process. Commander, Dragonwing, Special Operations. Amy had expected punishment, not promotion. Admiral, I appreciate the trust, but I am a medic. I do not have command training for special operations. Hayes smiled, the first real smile Amy had seen from her. You infiltrated an enemy warship, freed prisoners, and escaped with minimal casualties. You coordinated with a dragon through mental bond to overcome overwhelming odds. You planned every detail of your mission and executed it perfectly. Commander, you have been doing special operations. Now you will just have official authorization for it. She pulled a datapad from her console and handed it to Amy. Dragonwing will conduct high-risk missions behind enemy lines, rescue operations, precision strikes, intelligence gathering. You will handpick your team from volunteers across the fleet. You will have full operational authority within mission parameters set by High Command. Amy took the datapad and scrolled through the information. Her mind raced, already thinking about who she would recruit, what kind of missions they could accomplish, how to best use Draven's abilities in combat. What about Draven? She asked. What is his official status? Ally and strategic asset, Hayes replied. He will be under your command, as he has always been. High Command recognizes the bond between you and understands that separating you would be counterproductive. Where you go, the dragon goes. Relief flooded through Amy. She had worried that High Command might try to study Draven, to lock him in a lab and poke at him until they understood his biology. The thought had terrified her. Now she knew he would stay by her side. There is one more thing, Hayes said. Your brother Jake Morrison. He has requested transfer to Dragonwing. Do you approve? Amy thought about Jake, about how he had coordinated the pilots during the escape. He was skilled and brave, but he was also her little brother. Bringing him into dangerous missions felt wrong, but refusing would insult his abilities and his choice. I approve, she said finally. Jake is a good pilot. Dragonwing will need good pilots. Then it is settled, Hayes said. She extended her hand and Amy shook it. Welcome to your new command, Commander Morrison. Go get some rest. You look terrible. Amy could not help but laugh. Yes, Admiral. She left the bridge and made her way back to the flight deck. Draven was still there, now surrounded by medical personnel who were treating his wounds. They looked nervous, working on a creature that could kill them all with a single swipe of his claws. But Draven remained perfectly still, allowing them to do their job. Amy approached and the medics stepped back immediately. Through her bond with Draven, she could feel his relief at her presence. How do you feel? She asked quietly, placing her hand on his side. Sore, tired, happy, he replied. I did not think I would ever be free again. I spent 6 months in darkness waiting. Now I am here with you. That is all that matters. We have a new mission, Amy told him. Dragonwing, a special operations unit. We will be doing dangerous work, as opposed to the safe and easy work we usually do. Draven's mental voice carried amusement. Commander, I have followed you into battle against pirates, raiders, and entire fleets. I have trusted your judgment in every situation. This changes nothing. It changes everything, Amy said. We have official backing now. Resources, authority, a team. We can actually make a difference in this war. We have always made a difference, Draven replied. Now others will simply see it more clearly. Amy smiled and pressed her forehead against his scales. Through their bond, emotions flowed freely. Trust, loyalty, love that was not romantic but deeper, more fundamental. They were bonded, two souls that had chosen each other across species and circumstances. Over the next week, Amy began building Dragonwing. She sent out recruitment messages to every ship in the fleet, looking for volunteers who were skilled, brave, and willing to take risks. The response was overwhelming. Hundreds of applications flooded in. Pilots who wanted to fly alongside a dragon, soldiers who wanted to rescue prisoners from enemy territory, medics who had heard about Amy's work and wanted to learn from her. Jake was her first official team member. He arrived with 3 other pilots from New Haven Colony, all of them experienced and eager. Linda Carter, the shuttle pilot who flew during the escape, also joined. She brought skills in navigation and logistics that the team needed. Lieutenant Nina Ross transferred from Captain Carter's tactical division. Nina was brilliant at strategy, able to see patterns and opportunities that others missed. She would serve as Dragonwing's intelligence officer. Corporal Danny Fletcher came from a Marine unit. He was young, barely 22, but he had survived 15 ground combat missions. His specialty was demolitions and breaching. If Dragonwing needed to blow something up, Danny would handle it. Dr. Angela Price volunteered from medical services. She was older than most of the team, nearly 50 with gray in her hair and countless scars from field medicine. She had read about Amy's work and wanted to be part of something meaningful. Amy accepted immediately, knowing that missions would require medical expertise. Within 2 weeks, Dragonwing had 25 members: pilots, soldiers, medics, engineers, intelligence specialists. Each one had been personally interviewed by Amy. Each one understood the risks and accepted them willingly. They trained together on the Defiance for a month before their first official mission. The training was intense, focusing on coordination with DraHFY. Learning how to fight alongside a dragon required different tactics than normal military operations. DraHFY was not just a weapon. He was intelligent, strategic, capable of independent decision-making. The team had to learn to work with him as an equal partner, not just follow orders. Jake adapted quickly, his natural piloting skills translating well to flying in formation with DraHFY. Nina learned to predict the dragon's movements and plan operations around his abilities. Danny figured out where to place explosives to maximize chaos without endangering DraHFY. Angela developed new medical protocols for treating wounds caused by alien weapons. The first mission came in the 5th week. A Krell prison facility on a captured human colony. 200 prisoners, including civilians and children.